Bam, we just hit record and we are here. And audio check, are we good? I guess we're good.
Yeah,
it's always good when it's the two of us. It's a lot easier when it's just two. So welcome all of you. We're just going to dive right in. So
it's
welcome.
Friday.
That's right. Welcome back. We are the Building Better Developers podcast. Actually, right now, we are just the YouTube channel. This is the bonus material. Hopefully, you have come over here from the podcast and are checking this on a regular basis, because that's where we give a little extra information and some feedback that we have on some of the people we've talked to. This episode is a great one. Looking ahead, next week is actually going to be a very good one. Having a couple really good conversations here. And we are, even though we're not like AI themed or anything, we are definitely getting deep into the world of AI, and a lot more of that as we continue. So first off, I'm Rob Broadhead, one of the founders of, not that side, of Developer, also the founder of RB Consulting. Just throw that one out just because. We're RB Consulting, where we help you make sure that when you jump into a technology project of some sort, including AI, 6 months from now, you didn't waste your money. You didn't waste your time. You actually put yourself in a position so that you are going to benefit from the project and not wish you had done something differently. Good thing and bad thing. Good thing is, after months of rain and cold and stuff like that, I got to I've spent 6 weeks basically on a beach, like literally. Like I could throw a rock and hit the water, like on the beach kind of thing. We didn't use it enough, which is the bad thing. Yesterday we finally spent a little bit of time and actually laid on the sand on the beach. The rest of the time we've been exploring the areas and stuff like that. That was actually, I think, the first time I actually put my feet in the water since we've been here. So if you're going to do if you're going to plan a vacation or something like that, make sure that you do so with, work time available to actually embrace it as well. But even better is we're going to hand this over to Michael right now so he can introduce himself.
Hey, everyone. My name is Michael Malash. I'm one of the co-founders of Developreneur, Building Better Developers. I'm also the founder of Envision QA, as Rob points out is. Mine's right there. We create reliable, tailored software that helps you work smarter, scale faster, and stay in control of your business. Sometimes with AI. Good thing, bad thing. Good thing, we finally have two construction projects out of the way, so the house is starting to stabilize. We're starting to get back to normal. Downside, last night after 1 o'clock in the morning, we had a bunch of tornado warnings, so I am very tired today, but I'm energized for this podcast, so let's get it going.
That's the best way to do it. So this week we talked with Dr. James Masiri. And we got a very different, I think, for some of us, we got a very different point of view, because we actually went to a macro level instead of the micro level of you, your job, your career, your company, even maybe even a little bit of our industry. But we really got into talking about things on getting not like fully global, but definitely on a continental scale. Talking about specifically Africa, some of their challenges. And really looking at them and how AI can help or also introduce new challenges with them. I think this was for me a great conversation. Have not gotten back with him yet, but he is. I think I'm talking to him today or something like that. I've got him back on my calendar. I'm going to spend some more time with Dr. James, because there's a lot to be learned there, and there's a lot to discuss. There's a lot of opportunities there where we can make sure that AI is not just furthering the gap between the haves and the have-nots. Now, this one was also at a higher level. He's really talking about government organizations, industry leaders, things like that cross companies and time zones even, and things like that. We also talked about, there's also a little bit of touch about like ethics and some things like that we touched on. So I think this is a great opportunity for just looking back. Go back, if you haven't, go back and listen to those two. And if not, re-listen to the conversations with Dr. Masiri, because I think it gives a very different point of view on AI. It is not about just like writing an application. It definitely goes away from AI as a tool. It is a very different, it is a a movement or something like that. It's not really a tool, and it really puts a spotlight on some of our conversations about, like, what's the best LLM, and what does this better, and what does that better, and how do you do this better or that better? What's the tool to use in this situation? Because that's not really what the case is, or what the real focus should be. It should be, what are we doing with this? What are we fixing? What problem are we solving? And when we do, then what? Because this is where we're becoming right now. Is it's like, okay, yeah, we've got to get AI in the schools. We've got to get people exposed to it, and they're not. We're still, way behind on people getting there. There's a lot of people to come over to the have used AI side, even just using a chat bot, much less like paying for it and using it on a regular enough basis in their life or in their job. And this is an opportunity that Dr. Masiri sees with his whole continent, basically all these countries that are dying to take a step forward in technology. And this is an opportunity for them to do so. And I think it's a good place for us to put a mirror maybe to ourselves and our organizations, where we are dying to to keep up with technology and to move forward, is that maybe there's some of those same kinds of things, some of the same core thoughts and pauses that we are having, and that he's talking about, are the ones that we should have. Some of these things about, like, how do we actually train people? How do we not just get this in front of people, but train them, and not just how to, like, spell AI, but how to actually leverage it in their work? I will take a breath now and let Michael, because I think you also had a great experience here, and hear some of your thoughts.
Yeah, it was a wonderful conversation with Dr. James. It was also very eye-opening, because a lot of the conversations this season, even though we're not doing a season on AI, you can't get around not talking about AI these days. AI has become forefront around the world. The interesting thing, though, is where most of the world, at least the Western countries, are so afraid of AI. AI is going to take their jobs. AI is going to disrupt things. Africa is taking, or Dr. James is taking it in a different direction, and they are taking in a movement to, what can it do to better our lives? How can AI improve things? They aren't worried about it anymore. They're now trying to figure out how to take this and move forward. I think one of the best examples he gave is when cell phones came out. Africa they weren't connected by telephones. They didn't have the infrastructure. But the moment cell towers started popping up all over the place, boom, the whole country is connected through cell phones. And because of that, they are also connected to the internet. The biggest limitations they're still running into is power generation. So they are running into fundamental problems as a country, but they are finding ways around that. They're finding ways to improve their lives through the technology. And one of the things he talked about was how many young Africans see AI as a chance to improve their lives, not lose their jobs. They're looking to solve problems. He threw out a number, about 64% of workers are already using AI in Africa. That's higher than the global average. They want to figure out how to empower themselves. They want to figure out how to improve their skills, how to make their lives better. And they're using AI to do it. And I just love that, because for so many months now, I've had conversations with different people. Some are excited about, some are fearful about, some don't even want to talk about it. They see it as Skynet. And it's like, oh my God, the world's going to end. But it's kind of fresh to see how a country or an individual is trying to lead an effort to push AI as an improvement tool, as a movement to better their lives, not just be afraid, oh, it's going to destroy our lives. It's a flip on the story. And the last thing before throwing it back over to you, it was interesting because one of the biggest things we talked about was because of the infrastructure in Africa. Africa doesn't have the energy resources to build their own AI data centers. So they're relying very heavily on other countries' AI models. So one of the biggest concerns, and we kind of touched on it, was they could be importing AI biases and causing real world harm, because they could be getting those biases. They could be getting those racist. They could be getting things that they don't need as a culture. So there is concern with that. And I think one of the examples he threw out that they already saw this was they had some security company come in and try to train, and it was trained on non-African people. And when they tried to put the facial recognition system in to help, secure their buildings and that, it failed because it wasn't trained on the right models. So you got to be careful. And he talked about it a lot where, well, AI is great. We're trying to do this. We are running into problems where the data is leading to bad decisions and unfair outcomes. So I loved it. It was one of those energized. I left that and I'm thinking, okay, how can we improve the world? How can we, instead of just using AI as a tool, how can we kind of change the conversation?
I think that was a really insightful thing that they ran into with a real world example of where the facial recognition was failing because they honestly had bad data. We've talked about garbage in, garbage out. We've talked about some things like that. And this is a perfect real world example that AI is not smart. It's not smarter than us for sure. It is just working off the data that it has, which I guess in some cases, so are we in a lot of cases. And if you give somebody wrong data, if you give AI wrong data, then it's not going to get you the right answer. The challenge is knowing that it has wrong data, that there is not a drift from maybe pristine data that we started with. And then especially if you are pushing data back into the system, are you drifting from where you're supposed to be? Are you somehow scoring bad decisions better? Good example we've talked about, I believe we've talked about here, is the idea of using a AI to make a decision, particularly like let's say it's for contracts, to find the best contracts for government. Well, if it looks at the historical record, then one of the things it's going to see is it's going to see it biased towards, if it was a corrupt situation, the people that were more corrupt. So if Michael's company is the most corrupt company and they bought all the contracts, then AI is going to look at it and say, well, everybody in the past chose Michael's company. So unless you explicitly find a way to pull that out or block Michael out of it completely, then AI is going to just continue on the bad thing. It is literally, to some extent, the stuff that people complain about in the States all the time about white privilege and sexism and stuff like that being in the system, which this would be exactly where you would see it. If you saw, for example, in a racial thing, if you saw that C-level executives were always white was one of the things that AI saw, then it would say, oh, you must be more likely to be an executive if you're white, things like that. It would grade that higher. It's the same things we've seen with a few things that have slipped out where AI is not human, is racist, bigoted, all this things, other stuff. And there's a lot of things that it has because the source material it has is tailored that way. Now, this is important to us on a micro scale because if we're not paying attention to what we're building, we're going to end up in the same situation. We're either going to have drift or we're going to start in the wrong place. Simple things like orders, orders going in and out and fulfillment. Maybe prices change and suddenly all the rules that you had for what a good price was have now changed. AI can't handle it because it thinks that, it doesn't realize that there's a change. And the next thing you know, it's blocking orders or it's paying the wrong amounts. It's, there's things like that that can come into it. So there is a lot here that is the here and now of like, how do we they're starting at point A, basically. So now what do we do from here? And they at least are doing it with an eye towards what is going to happen when we get to B and C and D. Because they're not just saying, we need to learn this tool. They're saying, how do I leverage this tool? And I think this is a secret for any of you that are worried it's going to take your job, is that if your job, it will likely change your job. It should. That's not a bad thing. If that's the problem, if you can't do your job differently, then yes, you're probably going to lose your job. And maybe that was required, just like horse and buggy drivers aren't really needed anymore. They need to move on to something else. Same thing. The key here is now, how do you take this? How do you embrace it? Which is what they did, or what they are doing in Africa, is they're saying, all right, this is an opportunity. It's that whole, every challenge is also an opportunity. And I think this is where we can learn a lot from them in their approach. And especially as like societal level, because as Michael pointed out, it seems like there's a lot more people that are afraid of AI here as opposed to there, where they're like, hey, this is a great chance for us to like, jump into the next century. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, the last part is I think the whole fear thing is one of the things there that he mentioned is AI is being driven by private industry. It's not being driven so much by the government. Whereas here, the government's putting all these restrictions in place. We have politicians. It seems like we're getting the fear from the top down, not the other way around. It's like businesses in Africa, people in Africa, it's a bottom up approach. It's like, how can we take it from the people and apply it across the country? Where here, it's like, oh, we got to put all these guardrails in place. And it, in all government instances, there's always that chance for corruption, money, things of that nature. But even with organizations and businesses, but the way it can be applied well, and it can be applied right, and it can be a huge movement to raise the education level of individuals and train people of a country. It's just all in the implementation. And I think Dr. James is clearly one of those that has the right vision and is trying to figure out how to implement that.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, the bottom down or bottom up versus top down approach. Is that I think that is I think we are seeing that, and I had that conversation also with somebody recently when we were talking about how do you do that. Do you do middle? Do you do middle out in both directions? Because there's definitely an approach. There are companies that are trying each of those approaches. I think we found that top down probably isn't going to cut it. We've talked about that, where just having a corporate mandate that everybody uses AI doesn't really do anything. It's like, okay, everybody does AI, now what? That's the obligatory question, and then what? So if everybody's using AI, if you're not training them, if you're not helping, if you're not giving them a way to focus that, then you're really just saying, okay, everybody has a gun, start firing in the air, something like that. It's not helpful. The bottom up is somewhat okay, but honestly, that's the same problem we've run into with all the shadow systems in IT that we've had for decades now. The person that had the little Linux server under their desk, the people that are like, got their spreadsheets that are their special spreadsheet that does their job. All these little like rogue things. And now we're going to have rogue SaaS, basically. We're going to have somebody that goes on a weekend and says, okay, I built my whole SaaS product and I'm going to use this myself. And they're off and running, and suddenly your data is somewhere that you have no control over it, possibly. So there's definitely some bad there. And in the middle also can have its problems, because then you're sort of stuck because you're trying to figure out how to teach above you to nail the processes and to understand that AI is not about technology. It's really about business. It's really about getting the job done, and how does it get done? And then you're pushing down and you're trying to basically translate that into people that maybe don't want to, they're really worried that their job's going to disappear, or they're going to get too much stuff done. So you're also having to make sure that they realize that there is a growth path based on that.
So I'll throw out one more thing before we get to the challenge, because it came to my mind as you were talking. The other thing that's interesting, and I really, beyond the energy thing, I kept trying to figure out, why the hell do we want to build data centers in space? Yes, it's a vacuum. It's there's a lot of benefits technology-wise, but the cost to build a data center in space when we have so many things going on down here, again, I think Africa is going to benefit from this. It's like the cell phone thing. It's like, once you get a data center in space, you have all that energy producing, and you have the AI centers up there. They're going to be able to tap into that and not have to worry about building the infrastructure on their continent. So there goes that. The only problem they'll still run into is, do we have enough energy to keep the lights on? solve that problem, and then boom, they're off and running.
And that's, I mean, that is, I guess, that is always going to be the $50 billion question, is the infrastructure side of it. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that's really cool, but there's the infrastructure side, and then there's the energy is always going to be the thing. Is like and we'll see what they do, because there's always this idea of clean energy, but there's not enough of it unless you start introducing nuclear, which some people automatically say is not clean energy. And so you run into that. Gas, obviously, fossil fuels, we have them. If we start burning them more, then okay, then we're going to be running, we have to find something else sooner or later. Maybe space is the way to do it. If you can do something like that and you can generate it, especially if you can send stuff there, let the AI do all of its stuff, and then send some stuff back, put processors in space. Maybe that works. I don't know. This is where technology feeds technology feeds technology feeds technology. It reminds me, the late Scott Adams wrote in a book. He was talking about this, and he's talking about actually specifically the energy crisis. And he said, now his point of view was that people are going to figure it out. He's like, we're going to keep going and we're going to keep chugging along. We don't need to sacrifice now. And, the world's not going to end in 10 years and all that kind of stuff. Says, because what's going to happen is sooner or later, we're going to start bumping up against the limits. And along the way, either somebody's figured it out or somebody's going to figure it out, because we're going to be in a crisis, existential crisis moment, essentially, where, okay, we're now running out. Things are getting more expensive. All of that kind of stuff that's going to make the innovation is going to come. It's the same thing. Like if the world gets hotter, we're going to find a way to get more air conditioning, those kinds of things. That doesn't mean the whole world's going to get it, but generally as a species, that's what we do. This is going to be interesting because AI is accelerating a lot that maybe we're going to have to figure out how to slow it down this time. I mean, when we've done the Moore's law and stuff like that in the past, where things were just exploding, and sizes of memory and all the processing, all that stuff you could do, that was great. If AI is actually exploding and now it's pushing beyond the limits of what humans can sit there and actually watch and review and handhold, then we may have to slow down AI. There was an article out recently. Had somebody mention to me that it's about, there may be a coming worker shortage. Not that there's suddenly going to be a whole bunch of people out there because people get thrown out of jobs in AI, but quite the reverse, is that AI is going to generate a need for so many humans that we're going to end up not having enough bodies to actually do what we need to do. We're going to have to actually figure out a way to slow back down a little bit. So all of that being said, there's a lot here. We're going to continue on this. I'm not really rants, because I feel like it is ranty, but it's not totally. Let's talk about the challenge this week. And so briefly, Michael and I talked beforehand, and we had no idea what we're going to do for the challenge. And I said, okay, we've got the length of this podcast, or this episode, to figure out what the challenge is going to be. So I'm going to throw something out there and see what Michael's thoughts are. I think for this one, change gears a little bit, shift gears a little bit. And I think the challenge this week, my thought on the challenge this week would be to go out and do some research on where there is a lack of AI. And this may be in your industry, this may be in your neighborhood, something like that. Is just look at, you can go find some numbers, go find research, however you do it, that is basically where is AI not being adopted? And then the challenge is, how can you help it be adopted? And it could be something like, maybe there's kids aren't seeing enough in school. So maybe you can go help a school and do a AI awareness day or something like that. Maybe there's in the local colleges and you can go do a presentation or something like that, or have a conference and bring people in. It could be local businesses, and you just do something there to just say hey, here's how you can use AI for the most simple things like email and things like that. So it would be basically the challenge would be do good with AI. Basically is go out there thinking about what, some of what Dr. Masiri has gone through, and say, I wonder if there's something close to home that I can work with. And if it's something across the globe, even better. Thoughts on that, Michael?
I like that, because I wanted to do something that was a little more culture, a little more environmental. And I think that really fits within that, because figuring out how to, we've talked about solving real world problems for a while, but we've talked about solving your real world problems. So now flipping that around, I think, is a great challenge, because now you're looking at it from how can we solve problems with AI? Not my problems, but how can we solve real world problems?
I think that's like, yeah. So I think that's the key, because it goes back to why. Why are you doing this? And so now we're getting a little closer to, it makes it a little more real. It's not just, um, you're doing it to help your job, or your boss said so, or you got a few hours on a weekend and you want to putz around. It's like, it's doing it with a purpose. So, your why, your purpose, I think helps quite a bit. So we'll go with that, is that we will challenge you to that. I'm just going to call all of you out. We are not getting enough responses back on challenges. I would love to hear more about any of them, any that we've done. I think we get some here and there, but we get very little. And I would love to hear more, because I think this is one of the best places for us to go. This is the best places for us to grow, is for us to hear what you guys are doing with the challenges, see how those are landing, see where you're finding, challenges, getting through the challenges. What are the harder things? What are the easier things? Because then we can help all of us move forward. That being said, we're going to wrap this one up, because we got plenty to do ourselves, because AI is forcing us to go faster as well. But go out there and have yourself a great day, a great weekend, and we will talk to you next week. Have a good one.